We are living in a time where we all are witnessing one of the worst atrocities of our time and generation. Yes, I'm talking about Gaza. Yes, I'm talking about Palestine. Yes, I'm talking about the genocide that is taking place there. But what I want to emphasize today or discuss is what brought the rise of a person by the name Salahuddin. What happened in that span? Because when we lost Al-Aqsa previously in 1099, almost 1,000 years away from us, or 1,000 years before us, it took us around 88 years for our elders, for our princesses, for our scholars to take back Al-Aqsa, to reconquer Palestine of the time. And in those 88 years, there are a lot of lessons for us to gather from. And this is what I want to talk about today. Because sometimes we all wish, we all pray, we all wonder that when is the Salahuddin of our time going to come? Yes, bi'idhnillah, it is going to happen. It is the promise of Allah. It is the promise of our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the time comes, it will happen. But there is a responsibility, there is a job, there is a burden that I and you need to fulfill for that prophecy to be fulfilled. So let us work together and look into the history of the rise of Salahuddin from 1099 Christian era, when we lost Al-Aqsa, Palestine at the time, up until 1187, when we got back, when we reconquered Al-Aqsa. I remember this ayah of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal insanu innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan famulaqih. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O human beings, you must work hard. You must strive in the way of Allah to achieve the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Continue to work hard until you meet Him. So from this ayah we come to know that it is our job, it is our responsibility, that we must strive, we must work hard, we must give charity, we must fight for justice, we must raise our voice. All of this is inclusive in it for us to attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, there will be a Salahuddin on a day to come. But what is my and your role, what is my and your part in that? So let me take you in a glimpse of what happened between 1099 to 1187. When the Muslims of Palestine, when the Muslims of Jerusalem, when they lost Al-Aqsa and the Crusaders, the genociders of that time, they came over, they took over Jerusalem, they committed a mass massacre. They committed a mass murder in the entirety of the city and the entirety of the lands of Palestine. It is said that in 10 days, in a span of 10 days, over 100,000 Muslims and all the other inhabitants of Jerusalem and the neighboring cities were massacred in a span of literally 10 days. Imagine, those were not the days of the bombs or the guns. Those were the days where you would have to fight face to face. And in those days, within a span of 10 days, a mass murder took place. More than 100,000 Muslims were mass murdered. Now from amongst them, many of them came out in search of safety. And some of them reached Damascus, Damashq, the city of Syria now. Now in that city, in the first 10 days when a group of Palestinians came there, a masjid like this, the central mosque in Damascus, there was one of the scholars by the name Zainul Islam al-Harawi, and they came and reached out to the Imam, and you could see that they were tired, they were put down, they had blood on their bodies, on their clothing, and they were clearly desperate. And when that scene was there, and they described what happened with them in Palestine. Now this is scholar Zainul Islam al-Harawi. He immediately decided that he needs to take an action. He immediately decided. He's not a soldier, he's not a warrior, he's not a politician, he's none of that. He's just a regular scholar at the masjid who's going to give durus on the various topics of Islam. But he felt the need that he must do something, that which is within his capacity. He immediately packed his books. He gathered a few people who were of capacity, of knowledge, of political level. And he gathered a small group and he went all the way to Baghdad, where the Khalifa of the Muslims of that time was residing. He reached there. This we're talking about the first week after the genocide taking place. And they reached Baghdad and he tried to reach out to the Khalifa. Now obviously, the rulers of every time, there are rulers who are righteous and there are rulers who are lazy. There are rulers who will listen to the community and there are leaders who will not listen to the community. So you need to be cautious and mature of how to deal with that. He tried to reach to the Khalifa. The men around Khalifa would not allow him. He went to the masjid on the Jum'ah, and it was the month of Ramadan. He reached the masjid, and during Friday, he stood up And he did something so that he could gather the focus of the entire nation, of the entire community. On the day of Friday, in Ramadan, he stood up in the middle of the masjid and he started to eat bread. You can imagine the anger, the opposition, the refusals that the community would have done against him. They started to curse him, they started to stop him, they started to urge him to stop doing something which is so sinful. And when he caught the ears of the entire community, he stood and he said to them, I can agree with you that what I'm doing is wrong, is sinful. I agree with you that what I'm doing is breaking the tenets of Islam. I agree with you, doing this is shameful. And this shows that you have ghira in you. This shows that you have love for Islam and its tenets. And then he said, but are you aware that 100,000 of your own brothers and sisters have been massacred in Jerusalem? Are you aware that one of the 3 holiest sites in Islam, that is Al-Aqsa, has been taken away from us? Have you realized that that the land on which Umar radiallahu anh walked and conquered has been snatched away from us? Where is your ghira for the love of the deen of Allah? And where is your ghira for the love of Masjid al-Aqsa, the mosque in which our beloved Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he led the entire prophethood in the salah there? Where is your ghira for that? Now when he raised this voice, interestingly, the Khalifa was also attending the Jum'ah on the day. And the Khulafa, they would have a separate section for themselves. He heard that and there was an uproar in the community, and then the Khalifa agreed to meet the Sheikh. Now the point I'm trying to make here, my dear brothers and sisters, I'm not saying create some sort of nuisance here. I'm not saying do something which is illegal or do something which is unpeaceful. No. But what I'm saying is we need to use all the channels that we have. We need to raise the voice of the oppressed. We need to raise the voice of injustice. We need to raise so that the matter is heard and taken care of. The point here is, I and you, we are not in Palestine. I and you, we are not soldiers to fight and get people, freed. I and you are not politicians to lead the countries or make policies. No, but we need to do whatever is within our capacity. That is my and your job. That is what Allah is commanding in the Quran. You must work hard. You must strive to attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Praying salah is an obligation on us. We got to do that. But there is a responsibility as being a Muslim and being in the ummah and part of the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we need to do that. Now this is scholar, he did what he could. Then there were other scholars who raised the voice. The Khalifa, after the meeting, he said, yes, we will try to do something, as many of the rulers of our time would also do that, but there was no action for several years. Another scholar raised up by the name Abu al-Fadl ibn al-Qadshab in Syria, in the city of Aleppo. He raised the voice again. He raised to the Khulafa of the time again. And after continuous attempts by the leaders of the Muslim community, there was some uproar amongst the leadership of the Muslims, amongst the rulership of the Muslims. The Khalifa then ordered one of the Muslim governors from the Seljuk kings to go and fight the Crusader army, because now they were now trying to expand from Palestine. They did not contain themselves into Gaza or into the West Bank or into Jerusalem. Now they wanted to expand to Egypt, to Syria and all the other parts of the world. And interestingly, if you relate that, 1099, we're talking about 1099, and you talk about 2024, you will see a lot of similarities. The oppressor is not going to contain right there what we are witnessing. Is going to try and expand. Is going to reach every household that is in the nearby vicinity. Now, when they raised the Seljuk army, one of the Muslim governors, they raised the battle and they fought the Battle of Balat. Now, this was called the Battle of the Field of Blood. It was one of the very severe battles, and the Muslim army was hardly 10,000, and the Crusader army was double the 20,000. And this is talking about 20 years from 1099, 1119. What is happening is every time the scholars, the leaders, the Muslim activists, they are continuing to raise the voice in their capacity. Now this puts pressure on the community, this puts pressure on the rulers, this puts pressure on the army, and this is how the things and the system works. Now they fought, and this was the first time after losing Jerusalem, the Muslims ever won a battle. This gave amazing hope to the Muslim community, the Muslim community leadership, and the Muslims continued to do further steps and take more. There were scholars who were writing about the Fadail of Al-Aqsa. There were scholars who were talking about Al-Aqsa in their masajid, such as Ibn Amir. He wrote an entire treatise, certain volumes, to explain to the Ummah the importance of Al-Aqsa and the necessity of us to acquire it back. Years passed, another 10 years passed. There was then another military general by the name Maudud. He was again urged by the Muslim community, the people of the time. It is said that in Baghdad there were more than 100,000 Muslims who finally came out in the city of Baghdad and shut down the entire city, urging the Khalifa to immediately take action to free Al-Aqsa. We're talking about 60 years ahead of the victory of Al-Aqsa. We're nowhere near to the birth of Salahuddin yet. But the Muslim leadership, the scholars, the ummah who has a heart, who is worried about it, they would continuously raise their issues and they would do what they can. So Maudud, another Muslim military general from Syria, he took his army and he moved forward. And this was the first time the king of Jerusalem, the Crusader king of Jerusalem, King Baldwin, he came out of Jerusalem with his army to face a Muslim army. Because they had plans to now enter into Egypt and into Syria. So to stop that, Maudud moved forward. And that battle, they fought, and that is called the Battle of Sonobara. And in that battle, the Muslims defeated the king of Jerusalem. Now this changed the dynamics altogether. The Muslims who were so weak, who were so helpless, they thought they can never fight or face the Crusaders. But now, year after year, decade after decade, battle after battle, the Muslims were taking hope that we have the capacity and the strength to move forward. Now, subhanAllah, look at this. Maudud won the first battle against the king of Jerusalem. He returns to Aleppo. Within a month, he is assassinated by another Muslim ruler. SubhanAllah, look at this. The victory is now coming. The Muslims are now taking step, but there will always be those who will deceive us. There will always be those who will betray us. As we can talk about the normalization today as well, with some of the Muslim countries dying, urging, speeding up, competing to move forward to make what you call as normalcy. What you call as normalization. With the enemies, with the murderers, with the genociders. When that happens, we need to make sure that we raise our voice. The point here, my dear brothers and sisters, I'm not saying that we need to do something drastic right now. No. But we need to raise the voice within our capacity. Your social media outlets, your Facebook, your Twitter, your TikToks, your SMS, your WhatsApp, whatever it is, you think that that little forward, that little message that you will put out, that little call out against the genociders, that little call out against our own government, against our own ministers, against our own leaders here who are complicit in the genocide of the innocent people of Palestine. You need to raise your voice. And wallahi al-azim, look at the strength that Allah has granted us. You raise voice here in the social media, that is being discussed. That is being discussed in the war rooms by the head of America and the head of Israel sitting in the war room discussing that the public sentiment is going against our vision. Your message on that social media is changing the dynamics in the war rooms right now. So do not belittle yourself. Do not think that what you can do, yes, whatever you can do within your capacity, you must do. Channel yourself, whether it's the local government, whether it's the state government, whether you're meeting the ministers, whether you're meeting our brothers in the council, for example, raise your voice and raise it so that we can talk about justice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us in the Quran, in order to stand for the justice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, Surah Nisa, Surah number 4, ayah number 135, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist shuhada'a lillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, O you who believe, stand out firmly for justice, even if it is against you. As witnesses, shuhada'a lillah, become witnesses in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a huge responsibility. It's a huge honor. It's a huge responsibility and a huge sacrifice to do that. Stand against anyone and everyone that would do injustice. Now, this is not contained to Palestine or Al-Aqsa. Yes, for Palestine we must make dua. For Palestine we must speak up. For Palestine we must raise our voice to the houses of power. We must do that. There's no second thought about it. But we must learn from this, that there is not going to be a Salahuddin by himself. There was never a Salahuddin by himself. One Salahuddin by himself will never free Al-Aqsa. But imagine, look at this. What about the Sheikh in 1099 who raised his voice to the ruler of that time? Is he not part of the victory of Salahuddin? Think about that. Is it not that the army that first had the first battle, the Battle of Balad, where they fought the Crusaders and sacrificed their lives, are they not part of the victory of Salahuddin, of the victory of Al-Aqsa? Are the scholars who wrote about Palestine, are they not part of the victory of Al-Aqsa? The scholars who urged the rulers, Maudud and others, to go and fight and defeat the king of Jerusalem, the Crusader king, are they not part of the victory? So the victory of Al-Aqsa is not contained just to Salahuddin and his final army. No. The victory of Al-Aqsa is all the way from the scholars from the year 1099, who raised their voice, who did whatever they can in their capacity, who continued to raise the questions against the army, against the oppressors. Towards the end, I would say that Salahuddin is not the name of a person. Salahuddin is a phenomenon. He was born and raised up in a household like yours. He had parents just like yours. He had a masjid just like this. He was raised up amongst the people, amongst his own community, but he was able to speak up. He was able to be courageous. He was able to take those steps. We need to raise a Salahuddin in every household. Talk about Palestine. Now we don't restrict ourselves to Palestine alone. Yes, we need to talk about it. That is the urgency of the matter. But raise your voice against any injustice in your own society. Do we not remember a couple of years back, there was lockdown here in Australia, and Melbourne was the strictest lockdown, and we know the treatment that was done to some of us who are living here in this suburb, in these high-rise buildings. We were discriminated. We were locked much more than the rest of the country, rest of the city. We have to stand up unitedly against any injustice, whether it's the issue of the Aboriginal people, whether it's the issue of the disabled people, whether it's the issue of the homeless people. We must be in the forefront, raising the voice of humanity. And that is the job of ours. Now create awareness, defend your rights, and talk about it on every channel that you can, whether it's social media, whether it's in personal relationships. Raise the banner, sign a petition, talk to the people in power, whatever you can. Join a public gathering in the city, or join the protest, or whether you are talking to somebody in your workplace, raise the voice of the weak people as much as you can. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah Ra'd, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change the situation of a people until they change that which is within themselves. So my dear brothers and sisters, we need to stand up for Palestine, yes. We need to do charity to the brothers and sisters in Palestine, yes. We need to raise their voice, yes. But at the same time, we have other responsibilities as well. And this together is going to bring a change. The change will not happen just because I raise the voice. The change will not happen just because I called about the awareness. That is a job to be done. But as Muslims, we know nothing happens without the will of Allah. So my dear brothers and sisters, turn to Allah in dua. Turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in obedience. We need to make sure that we fulfill the 5 pillars of Islam. We fulfill our ibadah towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that's not fulfilled, if that's not contained, then the rest will fall apart. The second aspect that we need to make sure we are fulfilling is our mu'amalat, our dealings with each other. Whether it's between husband and wife, whether you are marrying or whether you are divorcing, or whether it's a matter of your children's responsibility, whether it's a matter of distribution of wealth in inheritance in the household, whether it is the issue in your workplace, whether it is the issue with the business between you and your brother or your family members, whatever it is, bring the teachings of Islam in your lives. Whether it's about taking a home loan, whether it's about building a house, whatever it is, make sure you go along with the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Stick to it. Hold on to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So make your ibadah fulfilled, obedience to Allah. Make your mu'amalat completed accordingly, and give charity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to assist those who are in need. Whether it's helping the homeless people here in this country, whether it's helping our brothers and sisters in Palestine, or in Syria, or in Iraq, or in Bangladesh, or in Burma, or in Sudan, or in Somalia, wherever it is, help our brothers and sisters with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us. I conclude with the ayah of the Quran from Surah An'am, Surah number 6, ayah number 162. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, verily my salah, my sacrifices, and my living, my life, and my death, my dying, are all for the sake of Allah, who is the Rabb of all that exists. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulihil Kareem, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My dear brothers and sisters, I come to you with a particular request. Subhanallah, while we have to look after all the international affairs as well, we need to make sure that we have established institutions, we have established places of worship and gatherings where we can raise our voice and have power to talk to those in the houses of power. So I request you, we have got a project here, inshallah, with the help and support of the masjid and the masjid committee who have supported us in the past as well. I request you to support. There is a charity project outside to set up a mosque project in Melton, and inshallah that will be a place from where we can talk about justice, we can raise the voice, and we can do what we can as a community, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands in the Quran in Surah Al-Imran, Surah number 3, ayah number 92, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, by no means you shall attain al-birr, that is piety, righteousness, unless you spend, unless you give, unless you contribute that which Allah has given you, and that which you love the most. And whatever you spend in the way of Allah, Allah is well aware of that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite our hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the wisdom to be able to lead the community. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant wisdom and give hidayah to our leaders, to our rulers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring victory to our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Allahumma a'izz al-Islam wal-Muslimin. Allahumma a'izz al-Islam wal-Muslimin. Allahumma a'izz al-Islam wal-Muslimin. Rabbana ighfir lana dhunubana wa israfana fi amrina wa thabbit aqdamana wa ansurna ala al-qawmi al-kafirin. Rabbi ighfir warham wa anta khairur rahimin. Rabbana asrif anna adhab jahannam. Allahumma thabbit qulubana ala dinika. Irhamna ya rabbal alamin. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min adh-dhalimin. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين وانصرنا على القوم اليهود على النصارى وانصرنا على القوم الصهيوني وانصرنا على القوم الظالمين وانصرنا على القوم المنافقين وانصرنا على القوم المجرمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح إقامة الصلاة إقامة الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.